Hey, Cameron.
Yeah, Myles?
Have you ever heard of the Court Jester?
No.
Well, that's not very witty.
Yeah, well, sorry.
Only the sharpest eye, the keenest nose, the quickest ear, and the fleetest toes can ever outfox the fox.
They'll never outfox the fox.
Only the stoutest arm, the bravest heart, with a magic charm and a good head start will ever outfox the fox.
They'll never outfox
Hello,
the fox.
everybody.
Those who try to tangle with
This
my
is Have You Ever Heard of course. I'm Myles.
And I'm Cameron.
And today we are talking about a very interesting show from 1955 called The Court Jester. I've recently saw this from a meme that I really liked, a small piece of it, and then I decided to watch the movie. And I watched the whole thing, saw how much music is in here, and being a fan of music, and knowing Cameron is a fan of music, I decided to introduce him to it. Have you ever heard of this movie before, Cameron?
Yes, actually. I had heard of it because another music friend of mine had told me that it was their favorite movie, and that's it. That's about as far as it went. I looked it up on Wikipedia and saw that it was like an older film and was kind of like, oh, older film, it's a period film, it's a comedy. Cool. I should have to check that out sometime. 5 years later, here we are. Now I finally get to check it out.
Exactly. So for those of you who don't know about the movie, in medieval England, a coup has occurred and the ruling family had been overthrown and killed. All that remains is a child heir, and he's being kept safe by a band of merrymen, outlaws, whatever you want to think. And the court jester is tasked with keeping the child out of harm's way, even though he's actually in the thick of the danger.
Well, I mean, that's the fun of it, right? You know, he's tasked with keeping the child safe, and shenanigans occur, and next thing you know, he's trying to figure out how to actually do that and not have the child be found and killed.
Yes.
That seems, really dark, considering that it's a comedy movie. Or maybe not dark, but that seems like really heavy drama. Like it's like like an action film or something,
Yeah, which is really weird for a time when basically all the action films were war movies.
Or westerns.
They need more guns.
Yeah, well... but no, this movie is like really funny.
Yeah, I totally agree. I after I saw that one meme, which is part of a scene from the movie, I thought, okay, this is actually really fun, and I have to find more about this. So of course I did my research on it and came across the movie, and I watched the whole thing. And at the end of it all, I said, "Wow, I'm thoroughly entertained by this." Like, I don't know if I'll say I have a taste for older movies. I usually like the newer stuff, minus Marvel and all that. Sorry, superhero movies don't do it for me. But ultimately, I really love the way this movie is portrayed. The pacing for it was excellent. The characters were cartoony but believable. I really liked it.
So, which scene was this meme? Because there's a few scenes that I can think of in this movie that would have made amazing memes.
Well, since you're rhyming just like the court jester, I'll tell you it was the in the very beginning when we first meet the main host of this show, or the main actor of this show, Danny Kaye.
Right.
He was doing his song about being the Black Fox, even though he is not the Black Fox.
Right. Oh, you're talking about the bit where all of a sudden he's just like, he starts multiplying?
Yes, exactly. And I loved it. It was beautiful. Perhaps I'll throw it up on the social media or something when we put this out, so that way you guys can see it and enjoy it just as much as I did.
Okay, because I was wondering if it was going to be like some of the stuff that they have later in the film. But okay, yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And that's like what? Like first 5 minutes or something of the movie that you have that song.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was great.
So we're going to go into more of the spoiler territory here. But before we do that, I might as well ask you, Cam, would you recommend this movie?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will have anybody I know watch this movie. You will enjoy something in this movie.
It really goes all over the place, and it really kind of pokes fun at itself a little bit, but it does it very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So absolutely, I would recommend this to anybody.
Okay, well, let's go into the spoiler territory and cue a little bit of music, perhaps maybe a little bit of the intro of it, and
hear some Danny Kaye singing. We'll see you all in a little bit.
When I was a lad, I was gloomy and sad as I was from the day I was born. When other babes giggled and gurgled and wiggled, I proudly was loudly forlorn. My friends and my family looked at me clammily, thought there was something amiss. When others found various antics hilarious, all I could manage was this. Oh, this. Oh, this.
So,
oh, this.
welcome to into the spoiler territory where we're diving into the show.
Which, of course, means that we're going to, talk about scenes that happen later. Like, when I was about to screw up and talking about what I thought would be a meme, I was thinking of when they do the night trials.
Oh, that is so memeable, yes. Well, let's get to that in a second here. Let's talk about some of the stuff that happens in the intro. Let's first of all talk about the cast of this show.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people in here that, if you're into the older genre of stuff, you would definitely recognize.
Well, I mean, not even just that, the fact that some of the people in this was like kind of like their breakout films sort of thing, because some of the two main actresses in this, Angela Lansbury and Glynis Johns, go on to have like huge careers on like Broadway and other films and stuff like that. And here they are already like doing pretty good with the roles that they have. Which I guess maybe just goes to show that they broke out really well for doing a movie like this.
Which is actually very interesting, because this movie did not do well at the box office. It actually bombed.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
It did not make very much money. It was very unsuccessful. Fiscally was unsuccessful, I should say.
Oh, okay.
It earned high scores on Rotten Tomatoes, but
so
it really
nowadays,
wasn't that great.
So nowadays, everyone thinks it's great.
Well, that's because in 2004, the Court Jester was actually included in the annual selection of 25 motion pictures added to the National Film Registry of the Library of Congress.
Oh, okay, so it's preserved.
Yes, it was
Nice.
deemed culturally and historically or aesthetically significant and was recommended for the preservation. So people looked back at this and turned around and said, hey, this film has something and it's important, whatever it was. Honest, if you ask me, it's probably both the pacing, because the pacing was unbelievable, and also the sound balancing. Personally, I hate the sound balancing in movies these days. I feel like I have to wear the earplugs I use at the shooting range because, it's super quiet some parts and I need to boost the volume so I can hear what they're mumbling about. And then all of a sudden there's gunshots.
Yeah.
And of course they're trying to make it sound like actual gunshots in the theater. I don't know why they'd want to do that. There was, especially in the States or around here, after the whole Batman incident thing that happened. Like,
you mean like, okay,
yeah,
right,
I don't know. I think that would be kind of a stupid thing to do, but apparently this is what the people want, and I don't want it. I don't want what the people want here.
I mean, I agree, but I personally feel that if there was anything that they felt that maybe it deserved to be preserved, also just had to do with like representation in it, because of the fact that, again, Angela Lansbury and Glynis Johns' characters are very central to the plot, and they're very involved too. Like,
yes, female leads that are actually like not a damsel in distress. They actually have a point, and they advance the plot.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. I mean, because the captain, she's more or less the one who is actually like running the show. Even though Danny Kaye's Jester is going around and he's the central focusing character, but because he's a jester, he's always being a goof and always making jokes and whatnot, and he's getting wrapped up in everything. And she's a woman in medieval times and also the 1950s, so she can't have too much to do, and yet she's the one who still is like, you're gonna do this at this time, this is our signal.
She's the mastermind.
Yeah,
she is. For those 5e referencers out there, she is the rogue mastermind. She controls the shots. She's the one getting everybody involved, trying to get everything to work and save the lives. And Mildred Nodwick as Griselda.
Ah, yes,
So,
the witch.
Mildred Natwick was amazing for being a witch, somebody who's trying to influence the princess and like get her on her side. I don't know if I didn't really catch what her whole job was, like what she was trying to do. I think she was just trying to be well off. She wasn't trying to advance some sort of underlined plot to overthrow everything, but she was just trying to stay, I guess you could say she's trying to be Rasputin.
Yeah, so if I was to say, much like most other witches that seem to be in stories like this, she probably came across the princess at some point and made some kind of an arrangement, but because Angela Lansbury's princess is very headstrong, very bullish, and very, I want what I want, and I will get what I want, and I will do whatever it takes, basically just kind of like overpowered the witch in a way to, now that she's involved, she's kind of like, oh God, what did I get myself into? She keeps talking about how she's going to kill me if, if things don't go the right way and stuff like that. So now she's just kind of like, I need to do this because otherwise I'm going to die, and I don't want to die.
I think she was like, oh, look at me. I found myself a great little, what would you call it? A great little never-ending fruit tree. And then it turns around and she went, oh crap, this requires so much maintenance. What was I thinking?
Yeah, like, wow. She is high maintenance now that you mention it.
I mean, she became Princess of England. I mean, if you're born in it, there's a chance you're not going to be very high maintenance. But if you come into it, well, by all means, everything is for you then, isn't it?
That's a very good point.
She, as her father said, you will do as I tell you. And she says, no.
Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like my D&D character.
So, yeah, from that perspective, I feel like just that alone is probably something that would be like, wow, considering films at the time, and then you look back on it, 50 years later, so then it's like, yeah, we should preserve a film like this because it's tasteful.
Oh, it's super tasteful. It's still kind of relevant these days, I'd say. Comparing it to like some of the newer ones, sure, it's not as dark and edgy and doesn't have all that blood, but you don't need that. It holds its own very well. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it's silly. It's funny, but it's not silly funny. It's not like fart jokes and humor like that we kind of grew up with, and I don't know, it's been kind of weaning recently.
It's very vaudeville. With like the kind of like physical slapstick humor that occurs. But again, it's all very just kind of like in line with the silliness of the circumstances, right? We need to do this.
Situational humor.
There we go.
Situational humor.
There,
yes.
That's a better way to describe it. And some of it may seem kind of tired or kind of trite a little bit, but I think the thing that I like about it is the fact that there's so much happening all at once. It's very much kind of one of those just kind of like keep throwing things at the wall to see what sticks sort of thing, and you never really get like a quiet moment, at least when we come to like the actual comical scenes, like whenever they snap their fingers, and therefore he keeps switching back and forth between the bewitched personality that the witch puts him under.
The heroic hero.
Yeah.
Who's coming to get the princess.
Yep.
And then himself. Who's kind of a goofy person that's totally not...
A little in over his head.
Oh, a little.
I
think you mean a lot. It's like a little, but it's a lot, so... Yes. So... That was a great scene with him, with them snapping their fingers.
And it keeps happening. That's the other thing, too, is that it keeps coming back.
Yeah, and then they keep doing it over and over, and he keeps flipping back and forth, and he doesn't know what's going on, but he's still under these controls. It was excellent.
I think my favorite bit about like it carrying over is when he's having the sword fight at the end with Basil Rathbone.
Well, let's talk about some other stuff before we get there.
All right. But I'm just going to say that like that is like a great way to have like tension, but also have levity too.
Yes.
But yes, you're right. We will get to that.
So let's talk about another great scene in this where he's talking to the king, and he's doing a whole lot of alliteration.
All the time.
All the time, because, of course, alliteration is hilarious, especially in the right context. And he even has the king doing it, and the king's trying to understand what's going on, and of course, Danny Kaye's character is just doing it to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
And the king doesn't realize it until the very end, and he's like, oh my god, this is hilarious. You know, this guy's a master of his craft.
I think that's, again, like the whole situational aspect of it is that he's in over his head for like pretty much everything when he's being Giacomo, the court jester. But because he has that kind of natural silliness that works well to being a jester, everyone just thinks that he's doing his job. Exactly. And it's just like, oh, that's just how jesters are. He's being silly and he's doing stupid things. And in his mind, he's like, oh God, I hope they buy this.
And he's sitting there playing
Please
his
don't
guitar.
die.
He's sitting there playing his guitar
Right.
when the princess says she's in love with the court jester, and he just
He's
repeats
like,
it, and he's
what?
like, wait, what's going on here? I have said myself, and oh my gosh, I'm in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it was excellent. Let's talk about another great scene that arrived here, one that you said would be very memeable, and oh my god, another unbelievable aspect of the movie. Let's talk about...
When he becomes a knight?
His knighthood tasks.
Yeah.
How happy those guards were to, like, throw him around. And they're like, oh yeah, we're going to make you a knight. We can absolutely do that. That's not a problem.
I like the fact that everyone's just in on this. Like, everyone just understands that it's like, well, normally it takes years and years to pass these tests. And it's like, you're right, but you know what? We need to make you a knight so that you can go and have this combat with the other guy, and you can die, and then everyone's problems are resolved. So we're going to do whatever it takes. If that means that we're just going to shoot the hawk for you, that's what we'll do.
Didn't even shoot the hawk. They just stabbed the hawk with an arrow and threw it at him. Like, or he's like, he has to go fight the pig in the pit, and they just let out a little piglet instead of an actual like boar.
I like that we don't even get to see what he does when he's wrestling the boar. They basically just throw him in. He's off camera, and they're just like, completed.
Yep.
What did he do? Who knows? But
you have to scale this wall in full plate. Throw him over with a log. Oh my god, that was
part,
good.
That part is what I'm thinking of in terms of like a meme. Just like the whoop.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually had to re-watch it because I fell over laughing and missed that whole actual part. Like the rest that came after for a good solid 5-6 minutes.
Just the way they do it. Again, like I was saying, with the vaudeville and like the physical comedy, it's things like that just like, it just works so well.
So let's move on to the next part that I absolutely loved in this, which...
Well, I thought you had more that you wanted to say about like the knight tasks.
Oh, yes. The tests of knighthood are definitely something that I would absolutely love to throw at somebody in either a D&D game or a Hackmaster game. I think it would be absolutely hilarious to like take either a rogue character or a bard character, maybe even a wizard, and like be like, oh yeah, you know, we're going to make you a knight and we're going to push you through the knight trials. And I'd absolutely use these sort of scenes as... I would use these scenes to sort of be the creativity behind... These are the sources behind my creativity of just like pushing them through the trials and, you know, keeping things lighthearted and funny while advancing the plot forward. If I had to ever throw PCs at something that they would probably see themselves as not ready for yet, but I'd be like, you know, you're high enough level and I can fudge the other guy and make him a little bit lower and, you know, maybe give you some boons or something and, you know.
Or even just kind of like make it seem like it's something serious and might, you know, be character ending or something like that. And then it turns out, no, this is just kind of a fun little trial for you.
Yeah, and
you
know,
just
like,
have to wrestle a boar. What?
Oh yeah, it's easy. You wrestle the boar. They throw you into the pit, and it's covered in mud, and the walls are about 5 feet high, so the boar can't get out. And they open up the gate, and out comes the boar. It is about 6 inches long and 4 inches high, barely able to swim above the muck.
Oh.
And that's when the guard turns around and says, "Task completed," and puts a big check mark on his task list and carries on to the
You
next.
showed up. Good job. You passed.
You were forced to show up. You passed. You were voluntold.
That would be interesting. I would look forward to seeing something like that in a campaign.
Oh, yes. Let's carry on a little more here. Once he has become knighted, or he's... right before he becomes knighted, during the process, the ceremony of knighthood.
Yeah.
And the king just turns to him and says, "Hurry this up, but we have to do the process. Be damned with the...
Yeah.
Damn, or let tradition hang, or...
Well, it wasn't necessarily that. He just said,
Speed it up.
Let's just get this through faster. And then all of a sudden everyone's just like, okay, sure. And then just like the music speeds up and everyone just like starts marching through at a way faster pace. I just love that everyone is like so good at what they're supposed to do. Like, I guess they've done this more than enough times in the past with other knighthoods that they just know everything. So it's like, okay, everyone, double time. Okay, we're going to say all the chants at double time now. And they just...
Well, they probably had to do it multiple times because this guy did overthrow the King of England. He has to recreate his new Council of Knights, right?
This is a good point. This is a very valid point.
So they probably are like, oh, at least this is being done faster. We can get out of here sooner.
Right. Exactly. I mean, again, with the fact that everyone is just like so enthusiastic about, yep, let's get this over with. The sooner, the better. And we'll just go back to what we were doing before.
Yep.
It's like, the guards and all of the people don't really have any malice towards any of the lead characters. They're just like, yep, this is what I got to do. This is my job. Let's get it done.
Just like a good guard should be.
This is my job. Let's go. Let's get out of here.
So once he becomes a knight, of course, he has to fight Jacquemo.
Well, he's Jacquemo, and then he has to...
He has to fight.
You're talking about Griswold, right?
Griswold, yeah. He has to fight Griswold for the hand of the princess. And I love the whole scene and everything where he finds out that, you shouldn't have to fight. We poisoned one of the drinks. And this is actually one bit that everybody seems to remember about this movie, is the...
the specific tongue twister that they have.
Yes, the pellet with the poisons in the vessel with the pestle. The chalice from the palace has a brew that is true. And of course, that rhyme gets mixed up very heavily in and throughout, and the one guard catches them saying this and tells Griswold. Mm-hmm. And of course, they're like fighting over it. But on top of it, one of my favorite parts about this is his armor gets struck by light and becomes magnetized. So he's he's like saying this to himself, and the guard's like, "Oh, don't forget your helmet." And he's like, "Oh yes," and the helmet like flies towards him, and he catches. He's like, "Oh, thank you," as if he thought somebody handed it to him. But of course, he's so set on trying to remember this this simple little tongue twister that way he doesn't take the wrong one and get poisoned.
I have to laugh with the fact that they both just kind of forget, and so they're just fighting over the drink, and so then the imposter king's just like, oh my god, take the drinks away, go get on your horses, fight.
Yeah.
This is stupid.
This is why we do not let jesters become knights.
Yep. Pretty much. I feel like the fight scene that they have is probably one of the only parts in the film where I was just kind of like, and now we're taking real creative license in terms of like what we're using, because normally if you're going to do something like that with horse combat, you would joust and you would use lances, and instead they're using flails and
maces, actually, or morning stars.
Well, they're specifically flails because they're attached with the chains, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
So the interesting thing about that is that I think I remember reading somewhere a few years back that there's no like actual evidence that the flail, as we know of it, was ever used by knights. They would either have lances or they would have war hammers, and that, or they would have like morning stars, and that's pretty much all they would.
Or the swords.
Well, you wouldn't. I think I remember reading that you didn't usually use your swords on horseback, because if you got it kind of... It was a lot more cumbersome to use on horseback, and so that was more if you were dismounted, then you would use your sword. Well, and then, of course, it depends on who you're fighting against or whatever, which is why war hammers were a big thing. You either have the spike bit so that you can pierce plate, or you have, the hammer bit, and you can just
knock them out. So one thing I will also add about swords is swords in the medieval era were actually a lot like handguns today in the States.
Yeah.
They were heavily regulated. Well, I guess you could say not in the States. They're like handguns in Canada. They're heavily regulated. It takes quite a bit of training to actually use them properly. Mm-hmm. And they were not designed for the actual combat that most people would do.
Yeah.
When you see these movies and stuff and you see the two sides full of swords and boards and they slam up against each other, that just didn't really happen. Most combat was actually done with either things like pikes, spears, or...
clubs, maces, that sort of thing.
Well, just long weapons like polearms.
Because right.
Polearms gave you the reach.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be very effective. You can hit that guy over there and keep him over there. You're not letting him get close to you.
Yeah.
So, and also a spear, a pike, those kind of weapons used very little iron compared to a sword.
Right.
A sword was a lot of iron,
mm-hmm.
and that, of course, was a lot of resource to
In
use.
addition to, generally, you'd probably want to make it out of steel as well, so that it's more durable.
Well, when they had steel, yes.
Exactly. So not everybody has a sword, because you need the materials to make the sword and make it actually last.
So one thing that I did here, I don't know about the truthfulness behind this, but it was a neat little thing I heard. Steel weapons were actually manufactured by the Norse, and they were found to be manufactured quite early. Because one thing that would happen is they would actually make a sword using the bones of their ancestors. And that would add the carbon into the blade to make the steel. So, they made these weapons and they thought that they were... their spirits were connected to the weapon, but it turns out that they were just made out of a better metal than iron. Sure, by all means, I'm not saying that it's up to the quality of steel that we use today, but it was definitely better than just the iron they had before.
Yeah, and because that's similar to how they were doing it in the Middle East, as we know of it now. They had similar kind of metallurgical processes that they just weren't doing in Europe. I mean,
you're
talking like Damascus steel,
Damascus
right?
steel, yeah. And the people who made Damascus steel were actually all killed because they didn't want that secret to get out. And of course, if it got out, they could manufacture way better weapons than the English had, and they didn't like that. Well,
we're definitely going a
let's
ways
leave all
here.
Of this to people like Shadiversity and Skull. I forget his name right now.
Scola Gladiatoria.
Yeah, Scola Gladiatoria and that. We'll let them deal with all that history. We're not history buffs here. We're just two guys talking about interests. Let's move on forward with this plot. After he managed to take down the knight, of course, Hawkins managed to take out the
Griswold. In his own way, he...
It was revealed that he was the Black Fox all along. And this is actually one part I really liked about the movie, and it has nothing actually to do with the movie itself. Well, not really. When, of course, this happens, they get their hands bound and that, and they get brought to the king.
Right.
There's the two little people that are actually dressed up as a guard, and the one cuts the ropes of them. And when he looks back, I found this really weird, and I don't know if you will agree with me at this or not, but that little guy totally reminded me of Charles Bronson from the Death Wish series.
I see what you mean.
Like when I saw
just
that,
in
I was
terms
just
of
like, what?
His face,
his facial features, and he had the mustache and everything, and I was like, oh my god, is that Charles Bronson for a second? Like, I thought I was seeing things, and I had to go back, pause, and rewind, and take a look again, and I was like, oh my god, he looks a lot like that.
Speaking of the little people, though, that's another thing that just kind of caught me by surprise, I'll say, just because of the fact that they're, again, pretty pivotal to the plot, and they're never treated like a joke.
Oh,
at
absolutely.
any point in the movie. Like, at the beginning, our jester talks about how he works with them, they're part of his troupe, they're his friends and things like that, and so they help him out with doing stuff. And then, of course, when the actual Black Fox needs to go there so that they can rescue the child, they can rescue the captain, and they can rescue the jester, and, overthrow the king and all that stuff, overthrow the phony king, however we're viewing him. And so it's like, oh, we can't fit through this collapsed tunnel unless we're, small, like a child. Well, good thing we have all these little people. They can go and they can save the day. And they do. Yes.
So that was actually that troop.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually a group of little people referred to as Hermione's midgets.
Oh,
so they're actually like a troop of acrobatic performers.
Cool.
And they were hired. I thought they did an amazing job.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it all, even down to the part where they're like all backs are up on the staircase, and they're like and pushing the knocked out guards up with their legs. Oh, that was unbelievable.
That was a cute scene. At first I was just kind of like, this seems really weird that the guards are just letting this happen, but then I forget, oh wait, they were just getting the crap beaten out of them with clubs a few moments ago, so I don't think that they can really fight back.
Oh no, they basically just gotta let this happen.
But yeah, now we're getting to one of my favorite scenes, is the sword fight between Danny Kaye and Basil Rathbone.
Oh yes, the sword fights were amazing. I have to say that the sword fights, in my opinion, were not up to the HEMA standards of sword fighting, but they were really good, especially when he's swinging back and forth with the sword with two hands, just trying to keep that blade away from him. That was actually a very, very smart move, because moving your sword back and forth quickly like that means he cannot thrust. It would just be deflected away every time he tried.
So one of the interesting things that immediately stuck out to me, well, at first, when I saw that Basil Rathbone was in this, I'm like, ooh, is he a good guy or is he a bad guy? Wait, this isn't a Sherlock Holmes movie, so he's probably a bad guy, because he was generally cast as the villains. And because it was a medieval one, I'm like, oh, maybe we're going to get a sword fight, because Basil Rathbone was one of the best sword fighters of his era, using the foil and the rapier. So much so that he was a world champion in World War I, that he was training soldiers to use swords and bladed weapons, because, they still did that in World War I, kind of. And when he came to Hollywood to be an actor, basically he was also the instructor for all of the acts. So Errol Flynn and all of those other guys, they got basically trained by him to do the sword fights that they did in their films. But even then, when he would be in these films and he would be on stage and and on screen and things like that, they still had to dumb it down so that it would actually look believable that they could beat him. And that's what they do here too.
Oh, absolutely.
So there were a few times where they specifically would only have either Basil on screen or they would have Danny on screen, and I just sat there and I'm like, I feel like they're doing this deliberately, because the choreography, it would look really stupid if we actually had two people, one who's really trained and one who is not anywhere near as experienced. It's just no, this guy's not going to win. But, I mean, I say that because I know, because I've watched a whole lot of other films with him in it where he, does sword fights and things like that, and I know about his history too. I get the feeling that for most people watching the movie, they're just wow, that's so great. And it's got the comic aspect too, because they keep snapping their fingers, and you keep switching back and forth between the different personalities.
Yes, it was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. I will say that the movie, I felt it ended kind of abruptly, because after this sword fight scene, it basically came back to the point where all the tension was roused, and he comes out and says, "This is not the real king. The line of succession, there's still an heir," and they prove it.
And they bring out the child who has the purple pimpernel on his bum.
Yep.
That's something we definitely won't do in a movie these days. Have a child where we just keep showing off their bum to everyone.
Yeah, that's definitely is dating itself there.
That's like the one thing where we started watching the movie and they're just like, "Oh, how do we know that it's a child?" Well, here we go. And I'm just like, yeah, that's just something we don't do anymore.
Let's also point out that another thing we don't do is have everybody sing in unison at the end of the movie as if they're all friends now.
Oh, well.
You think the traitorous king would be hung or have his head chopped off? Oh, no. He has to endure the greatest Canadian punishment of them all. Take part in a sung chorus. Just like all the other common folk. It's right up there with the clicks of disappointment. It's the punishments you do not wish to get.
I mean, I feel that that's more just kind of the nature of the genre of the time. Honestly, it's no different than if you think of like DreamWorks movies these days where it ends with a dance party.
That's true. It's very true.
That was just the style of the time.
So now that we kind of basically went over the whole thing, let's do a quick little overview. I loved the pacing of this movie. The cast was unbelievable, very well picked. It went extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
I love how the characters are somehow both cartoony and believable, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
And honestly, movies these days, I think, could take a big page out of this on the sound equalization and control of the volume.
Yeah, definitely.
There's too many movies these days where it's like, what are they saying? What are they saying? And then all of a sudden it's gunshots and it's way too loud.
You know, sometimes you have a movie where that's appropriate, though. Like if you're watching something like, A Quiet Place.
Oh, okay. Well, The Quiet Place that's a whole other can of worms there, man. We gotta leave that in its own little area, and it's perfect the way it is. But I'm talking about the majority of like action movies and that these days. Like,
yeah, that's
even The Matrix, I say, did a terrible job with their sound control. There's a lot of times where you're like trying to listen in and hear what they're saying, and then it's like, oh shit, now it's all too loud, and
right.
I didn't enjoy that.
Yeah,
and I find that they still do a lot of that, and I don't know, I'm not a fan of that.
I agree. I understand what you're talking about. I just
another thing that I did like about it is even though they did use a lot of words that would be considered older, they didn't just tell you what they're doing. They showed you at the same time. So you never felt like, oh, am I missing something? In some movies, like in my opinion of Lord of the Rings, I love the movie. It's a great movie. But there's a lot of times where it's I should say that I'm talking about the original Lord of the Rings, the animated one, not the newer one.
Oh, do you mean like the Ralph Bakshi one?
Yes.
The one that has like all the rotoscoping?
Yes.
And
yep.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that they say and they don't show, and that kind of left me in the dark because I'll admit it, when I watched it, I didn't know a whole lot about D&D and the Tolkien lore and that, so I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't play a whole ton of D&D back then, and I didn't know a lot of the words and what they were talking about, which kind of confused me. But in this, they definitely would speak about it, and they would show it, which was very nice. It was very... it kept the pacing feel like everything's moving forward, and it's not slowing down.
So, like, it holds your hand, sort of, in the sense that they act out what they're talking about, and they do it in such a way that you can connect the dots holistically and just be like, oh, okay, that's what they're talking about. Like, I gotcha.
Exactly.
Sort of like, kind of like how with Mad Max Fury Road, one of the big complaints that a lot of people had was that there was so little dialogue that they couldn't figure out what was going on, even though for a lot of other people that are just like, well, it's a visual medium, so if you watch, it kind of does tell you what's going on with the limited dialogue that they give you. This is not a talky movie.
It's very true. I did love that, actually, about Fury Road. I love movies that, like, sure, they'll tell you, but they'll absolutely show you what's going on. I mean,
right.
If I wanted to watch, or if I wanted to do something that things are being told to me, I'll listen to a podcast or something like that, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Look at me breaking a fourth wall here.
Yeah.
So, ultimately, what were your opinions about this movie? You know what? Let's take it one further. What was one of your critiques about this movie?
What was one of the critiques that I had about this? Well, I think I already kind of touched on it, and that was more just the fact that even though it's still like a period film, it's still very much trapped in the stylings of the time, which means that it's just kind of like, oh, we're doing things that, you know, are flashy and look good in the theater, but don't really make a whole lot of sense for the historical period that we're trying to show off. But at the same time, I also sit back and think to myself, I don't feel like any of the actors would have been comfortable jousting.
Yes, jousting is extremely dangerous, and I don't think that would be something that they would have been very...
Considering that it wasn't until, like,
I don't think their insurance would cover it.
Yeah, considering that it wasn't until, like, the 90s when... oh, no, I guess maybe the 80s that they started to have actual jousting with lances in these types of films. Because... for this time period, you didn't have, like, a stunt person. You did that stuff. And if you didn't do it, maybe there might be, like, a double or something like that, and you have, like, a long shot or something like that, so we can't actually see the actor's face, or their face is covered, and so we can get away with it. But generally speaking, in this time, you did all your stunts yourself. And if you couldn't do them, then we didn't write those stunts in because you can't do them without hurting yourself, which is not the point.
Exactly, no.
Like Errol Flynn, he did pretty much all of his own stunts. Sometimes to the detriment, because I think much like Jackie Chan breaking his leg every so often, or like once a movie,
yeah,
that happened to him a few times too in some of his swashbuckler films. That's honestly the only thing that sticks out to me that I did not like. There's nothing else that I can think of that I did not enjoy from watching this film. It's great.
I'd have to say the one thing I didn't really like is the whole romance that they kind of forced in there between the captain and Hawkins.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that wasn't a necessity. I felt like it was kind of thrown in there last minute.
It was
didn't really go anywhere either. So,
well, that's a good point. I kind of liked it in the sense that it still is kind of abiding by this idea of courtly love, as they call it for the time period, which is basically, you know, if you are like in different stations, then you will like write poetry and sing songs and things like that, and all of these kind of like philosophical ways of expressing your love, but you will never touch that other person. You will never touch your beloved. You'll never kiss them or anything like that. You just don't do that. So from that perspective, I liked it. I thought it was cute, although
But he hugged her.
Yeah, I know.
So he broke the rule.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely understand where you're coming from. You know, worked for me, didn't work for you.
So I'd give this a 9.6 out of 10. Of course, round up, but...
I would... I'd probably say like a solid 10 out of 10 for me.
Yep.
If there's anyone else who has opinions on any of the romance stuff, because, there's a few people that are involved, and it's like kind of a sort of triangle that we have between our two leading ladies and our leading man in a sort of way.
But I mean, let's be honest, Danny Kaye can sing.
Yes, he
can do it well.
He can sing. He can perform.
He can dance.
That's one of the big things for me, was that I had never heard of him before this. And then I went and I looked him up and I found out like all the stuff that he did. And I'm just like sitting here going, wow, as a performer, as a singer, the fact that I haven't like watched more of his films and stuff like that and just did not know who this person was, that's like kind of a bit of a failure on my part, I feel, because he's so good.
Exactly. Yeah, he was amazing.
Because like I had never heard of him, you know, in and amongst other guys like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly and those from the same time period. So how the heck did I just not know about Danny Kaye? But now I do. And so I have to say thank you, Myles.
Not a problem. So let us know, everybody, if you've seen this movie, if you like it, or if you have complaints. Also, if you've seen this movie, you like it, and you want to recommend something to us, let us know.
Yeah.
By all means, I'm more than happy to watch these older movies, at least give them a shot. There's a few that I have that I'd like to recommend, and we will carry on. And I think that's the end of our episode.
Yep, I gotta show you some old-timey films now too, Myles.
Excellent.
Well,
you'll have to save that for later, because October's coming up, and that means we have to get on some possibly ghost stories.
Well, all right. That's what we're gonna do. We'll see.
We'll see. Maybe you can show me some horror too.
Yeah, that's true. All right.
But nice talking with you.
Until next time.